Hi, I'm Rob.
And I'm Rob.
And this is Ask Rob and Rob.
Hello everybody, welcome to Ask Rob and Rob, the show where you give us your brilliant property questions and we do our very best to give you at least a half-decent answer. Well, you must think so because you keep sending your questions in and we keep going. And this week is no different. We've got two brilliant questions coming up. But before we do, let's give you a quick reminder of how you can get involved with the show.
Yep, all you've got to do is call 013 808 0035. That's 013 808 0035. Or go to propertyhub.net/ask. Both those methods will take your question, drop them into our inbox, and then we will answer them on the show, just like we're about to do for Jonathan.
Hi, Rob and Rob. Jonathan here. Absolutely love the show. Keep up the great work. I got married recently and my wife had previously purchased a 2-bed new build in Balham 5 years ago, which is unfortunately now worth 10% less than the purchase price. However, she has 50% equity at the current value. For our next move, we're looking at two options. Do we sell it and buy the ideal property, or do we release some equity and rent it out? We've spoken to a broker who's given us a budget if we rent it out, and we've seen a house in Brixton that we like and we could convert a loft in that in the future and add value to it. It's worth noting that she's a high rate taxpayer, so we'll get stung on the rental income. However, we won't pay any sales or lettings fees because I'm an agent. We're really in two minds about which options to choose, so it'd be really great to hear your thoughts. Many thanks.
Thank you for the question, Jonathan. It's a tough one. My initial instinct when I heard your question was sell. And that might sound strange at first because there's a general view of never sell a property. And of course, it's not nice to sell a property at a loss and lock in that loss, which currently is only a paper loss. But based on where the property is, I'm making an assumption that the return that you'd get on that property probably won't be the strongest. Yields tend to be pretty low. You'd probably be okay in mortgage stress test terms at the 50% that you're at now, but I think you might struggle to release equity to move on to your next purchase because, again, this is based on assumption. You'd have to work this out. I don't know if the rental income would support it. And in any case, with the returns being low and growth in the future likely to be higher elsewhere, you could probably take that money and deploy it better elsewhere. So that was my first instinct. But then from what you've said, it sounds like you'd be using the cash that you free up one way or another to go and buy a bigger and better home for yourselves to live in. And that's fine. But if you did do that, having sold your other property, then effectively you are going to have higher personal outgoings because you've got a bigger and nicer place. And you're going to have no money coming in to offset that. So it puts you, in the short term at least, in a worse financial position. So it's a difficult one. You'll know the specifics better because you know the area better and you are an agent, so you'll have good insight into this. But I think if I put on the spot, I'd still say sell, but maybe look to reinvest that money in an investment that's going to make you money rather than a home that's going to cost you money. But Rob, it would make it really interesting right now if you had a different view.
You know what, Rob? It's really interesting, your default starting position, because mine was different and mine was don't sell. And that's because of that old school of thought, which something that we used to both subscribe to back in the day, we're on record for saying it, is that you never sell a property. Obviously, we've been podcasting for a long time and our views, our education develop, and we have a different view on that now. And that is, in some circumstances, yeah, sell a property, but only if the conditions are right. I think the conditions could be right here, but we need more information. As a local agent, as Rob's already touched on, you'll really know this market, you'll know the rental demand and you'll know the return. And I think it just comes down to weighing two options up with numbers. And that's what should make this easier, because at the moment there's probably a lot of emotion. You've lived here. You've also got to deal with that emotion of the property falling in value slightly and how that makes you feel. And that can make it challenging to move forward. The way to move forward for me is to get the numbers on a piece of paper or a spreadsheet and go, right, what's the best decision financially? What are the numbers telling me? So if I refinance and deploy the capital this way, is it more effective? Or if I sell it all up, after cost, I'll have this amount of money and deploy it this way, am I going to get a better return? So for me, it is a numbers decision. It's going to take a little bit of work to run through all those numbers, work out the tax implications, work out how much money you'd have if you refinance, work out the return you'd have versus the sell model where you pay off whatever taxes on the new properties that you purchase, etc., etc. Build this model out. I've made it sound probably more complicated than it needs to be. I don't think it'll take you more than half an hour if you're half decent with a spreadsheet and okay with maths. And then at the end of it, you can go, right, okay, If I use this money in these type of new properties instead, then I'm better or worse off. And that should guide you. Because there's a lot of emotion tied up in this decision, and understandably so, it makes it harder for you to move forward. So try and strip as much emotion as you can out with a spreadsheet. And let's face it, for most people, spreadsheets do rip away emotion. And then that leaves people to be focused on the right move for them. So Rob, no, not necessarily different advice or a different view, just really how to make this a less emotive and therefore help you make better decisions. So next up, we've got a question in from Serena. Let's have a listen.
Hi, Rob and Rob. My name is Serena. I wanted to say I'm really loving your podcast. My question is, I have £100,000 to invest. I know that the best strategy for me is possibly a regular professional buy-to-let, given that I don't want to commit more than an hour or so a week in my time. My goal is to have a decent passive income stream. And my question is, should I buy a new build flat in Leeds or Manchester? Should I look to buy 2 new build flats, maybe a 1-bedroom and a 2-bedroom, if I can scrape together the money? What about the service charge? Is that something that I'm worried about? Thank you a lot in advance.
Serena, lovely position you're in, great pot to invest with, and you're looking at 2 great cities. So which one should you do? Well, it's tough. And that's because it's going to come down to what you want. There will be pros and cons to whatever strategy you choose. So, for example, if you go and buy just one property because you're time poor, you will invest your entire pot, and that means you only have one property to worry about. It means that there's probably going to be less time involved than buying, say, 2 or 3 properties. So you only have to have one managed, you only have to find one. So lots of plus points. So do that? Well, you have to understand the downside. The downside is you better get that one right. Because if you don't make a great investment, then you've allocated your whole pot towards that investment and you're going to be hurt in the medium and long term. Whereas if you split that pot out and maybe buy one in 2 different cities, then not only are you getting some diversification across the cities you're focused on, but also, hopefully, if one investment doesn't turn out to be as good as you'd hoped, the other one might help you out. But the downside is then you've got to find 2 of these properties, you're going to have 2 of these properties managed, and that will take up more of your time and your time poor. And then there's so much more to consider, like your goals and what you want to do. Now, if you're thinking, oh gosh, I'm no further on after this answer, well, there is some good news. We do have a YouTube video that guides you through this process. Now, you'll find the video on our YouTube channel, and it's titled something like How to Invest £50,000. Now, I know you've got 100, but just double it, and then you'll be fine. But it guides you through the thought process you need to go through to make the best decisions with your money. Here's the thing, nobody can tell you exactly what to do because they don't know you well enough. Okay, we've got a bit of information, we know how much money you've got, and we know that you're time poor, but we don't know what time frames you're putting into this. So it would be wrong for us to tell you exactly what to do. We'd either have to sit down with you and really help you unpick, what's important to you, and then get to a final decision. But unfortunately, we can't do that. But what we can do is give you the process to go through that yourself. And then hopefully you'll come away with the right decision for you. So make sure you check out that YouTube video. And if you have not subscribed yet, please do go to YouTube, search for Property Hub UK, subscribe. You can hit that notification button as well, which will keep you updated of videos going out. And we put out all the main podcasts there, but also unique videos like this £50,000 one that you won't find anywhere else. So it's unique content that we put out just on YouTube. So make sure you take advantage of that.
And Serena, you also said that you were worried about the service charge. For the most part, I think people who are newer to property over worry about the service charge. I think the service charge feels very real and significant because you know it's a defined amount of money for the whole year or for 6 months going out in one go. Whereas if you owned a house with no service charge, you don't have that bill going out, but you do at unpredictable intervals have potentially larger bills coming in. And if you weighed them up against each other, there probably wouldn't be much in it. But if it is a worry that is holding you back and you just can't get past it, then there are things you can do. So you could look at new build houses instead of new build flats, where there isn't a service charge and there's a brand new boiler and everything's protected by warranty for 10 years. Or you could buy a flat that's not new build, because then maybe you'd have more certainty over the service charge, because then you could go back and look at the previous few years' charges to see what they actually are, not what they're projected to be. But the downside of that, of course, is that the building is now a little bit less new, so there is potential that more will need to be done in future and the service charge will go up. So there are options, but in general, I'd say look at the investment as a whole. This goes back to Rob's first answer about going back to the spreadsheet and trying to take the emotion out. The service charge is a factor, but there are lots of factors. So as much as you can, rather than focusing on one specific thing, look at the numbers, look at the investments as a whole, and let that guide your decisions. So there you go, 2 more questions answered. I hope Jonathan and Serena found those useful. I hope you did as well. I hope there's something you can learn and take away and apply to your own investing. And I also hope you'll be joining us on Thursday for the Property Podcast. So if you do, we'll see you then. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.